Welcome everyone to another workshop here at the Test Camp. This is Paraprofessional Education Reading. Today we're going to discuss the knowledge and skills that will empower your test confidence. Now, those of you joining us live online, you're welcome to contribute your comments anytime. We're going to include them up here during the discussion periods. And if you join us on demand directly through the Test Camp YouTube channel, of course you can pause and restart or replay that video anytime. Now this workshop is one of 3 in our series in the Paraprofessional Education Test. Right? Feel free to ask questions during the workshop, and I'm going to repeat them for those listening to the recording. Right? So ask me anything, stop me anytime, and I'll let those folks that are listening in be a part of this. The motto here at the Test Camp is prepare, practice, perform. That's important, because you're beginning to prepare here today in this workshop. You practice the testing skills while learning the content of the training sites, and then expect to perform with test confidence. That's how it works. Let's get started. To prepare is to gain knowledge about the test, but also to gain knowledge about yourself. It's the first step in becoming a skilled test taker. We start by learning the test blueprint. And many of you, I think you told me, you have participated in at least one of these. Is that true? Okay. So you know that if you know the blueprint, that's a good first step to fully understanding the test. Assessing your knowledge of the blueprint is also a good first indicator of how well you're going to perform on the test, because you can also create what we call My Study Plan, a schedule that includes reviewing and studying the test content. Now, this plan is going to guide you also through the test skills training. It's designed specifically for this test. All right, more on that later in the workshop. Now, here's an overview of the test, the ParaPro assessment. Now, this is the test that many of you are prepared for. You've already signed up for this, is that right? How many have? All right, very good. All right, notice that this exam is a series of 3 individual tests. Each one is very different. And we're here in this workshop to talk about the reading test, 30 multiple choice questions, and the time allotted is 60 minutes. Now, that's not really true. Anybody, can you figure out why is that not really true that you have 60 minutes here? You really have 150 minutes for all 3 sections. We're just suggesting that you budget about 2 minutes for each question in reading, and also down there in math, right? And we talked about that during the writing workshop. All right, it's just one large test. That's exactly right. It's not in 3 sections. All right, this plan is going to help you establish what we call a pace for success, because you decide when to answer a question and when to save it for the next pass through your test. And that's one of the testing skills we practice over at the training center. Our first step now, though, is to identify what types of reading questions you can expect to encounter on your test. All right? Now that you know the questions are formatted, you know that they're all multiple choice, right? We can identify the reading competencies on which the questions are built. On this test, there are 4 competencies. Let's look at each one individually. Starting with ideas. Questions based on this competency test your knowledge to identify inferences, what's it say up there, conclusions, and assumptions. So you're looking at a passage, you're going to be questioned about the authors or the writers' inferences, conclusions, or assumptions, and we call that ideas. Here's a sample question. Okay, we're not going to read all that up there today. It's just a typical passage. In this case, it's the Gettysburg Address. But down there at the bottom is a typical question based on this competency. All right, so pretty straightforward. And you can see that this question is related to ideas. Here's a second sample question. So note in this case the question is related only to a certain statement. All right, so that's how it works. All right, so those were a couple of examples of questions written to test your ability, your competence, to identify key ideas or details from a passage. The next competency is purpose. To determine the author's purpose, sometimes called the focus, you can ask yourself, why? Why was this passage written? All right, here at the test camp, we help you identify the 4 main reasons Can you think about what they might be? All right, here's the first on our list. Opinion. What are some other words that are similar to opinion? What would you say over here if we were a thesaurus? Belief. So your opinion is your belief. How about over here? Viewpoint. Point of view. There you go. All right, and when you write an essay, you might be given a prompt that asks you to express your opinion. All right, but anyway, let's take some time here to discuss this at the tables. You can introduce yourself here. Opinion is just one of the 4 main reasons for writing. So what are the other 3? Share your thoughts with each other. See if you can match our list of purposes for writing. All right, we'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. Hey, those of you joining us today live online, share your thoughts and we'll include them in the discussion. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to pause that recording and list some of your thoughts about how you categorize purposes. Think about why this might be important when preparing for a reading test. We'll be here when you restart the video. All right, back up here. Here we go. All right, back up here. All right, let's take a look at the 4 main purposes. They're right here in this sample question. All right, so you see them represented here? All right, notice that there are 2 main categories, argumentative and informative. The first argumentative purpose is opinion, when you want to express a certain viewpoint. The second is persuasion. And how many at your tables had this one? All right, pretty much everyone. And how is this different from opinion? Can somebody tell me? I'm going to repeat this for those listening to the recording. Right, persuasion then, yeah, there you go. Persuasion is a call to action. It's more than just providing a point of view. Now here's a sample question from that same passage before, the Gettysburg Address. Is this question argumentative? Yes. Is it opinion or persuasion? Yeah, it includes the author's opinion, doesn't it? And later on, he gets more persuasive. All right. Well, there's 2 informative reasons to communicate also. The first is simply to provide information. When you want to teach, you just provide facts or concepts. And many of you recognize this from your teacher education programs. This is called direct teaching. The second way to be informative is to provide an explanation. That's just when you want to describe how. You give directions, you give instructions, that sort of thing. So here's another sample question. See if you can see what's different here. They don't say purpose, do they? What are they saying? Yeah, they use the term focus. Sometimes that's used interchangeably on these tests. It means something slightly different, but basically you're looking for their purpose or their focus, why they wrote the passage. All right, we discussed purpose in more detail in the essay workshop too. Let's move on to the third competency, structure. You might remember from the English workshop that these are the main concepts associated with structure: modifiers, parallelism, and syntax. Do you remember these? These are all related to how authors structure or organize, how they build their sentences, how they build their passages. And here's some terms related to structure: literal, figurative, and in some cases the author is technical. So let's take time again at the tables here, discuss the meaning of these terms. What does it mean to be literal, figurative, and technical? All right, share your thoughts with each other and how you would explain these terms to maybe some of your students. All right, see if you can come up with some examples. We'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. Hey, welcome again to those of you joining us today live online. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. We're going to continue to include those up here when we have our discussion. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to pause the recording and check your understanding of these writing tools. Think about why this might be important when preparing for a reading test or for when you write your essay. And we'll be here when you restart the video. Okay, so back up here. All right, so welcome back everyone up here. Good discussions at the tables. We're now more clear about these tools. Let's run over them for the folks who are listening in on the recording. Literal, I think you said the author means exactly what is written. Is that right? The author says what they want to say. All right, figurative. You said the author asks the reader to make the connection. Did I get that right? All right, and then technical, the author is providing information or an explanation. All right, I've got all three. There we go. Let's look at some sample questions here of a typical structure question. Why did the author put these two phrases together in this order? All right, so let's invest some time now to read the two phrases that are numbered up there in bold. All right, now let's eliminate some of the answers down there starting at the bottom. We can eliminate contradicts. Sure, sentence 2 does not contradict sentence 1. What else can we eliminate? Yes, that's what I add to. Right, we can eliminate restates. So that leaves you with clarifies or expands. Which do you like best? So that's a question answered, which also provides a preview for the next pass through the test. The fourth competency then is vocabulary, which you likely recognize from the English workshop. And these are the skills used to build test questions for this competency. All right, meanings of words, selections of words, and diction and tone. And here's an example. Of course, you're going to be given the whole passage. Yes, question back there. I'll repeat for the people listening to the recording. Okay, so the question is, how long are the passages? Is that right? Usually 3 to 4 sections if there are paragraphs for an essay. So 3 paragraphs, rare cases 4. Sometimes it's a poem. What are you hearing? 2 to 3 stanzas for a poem. Okay. Again, you can see why answering vocabulary questions, though, on the first pass through your test could become a valuable time management strategy. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. You can also expect to be asked vocabulary tools, like this question about an idiom. All right, so that's an overview of the 4 competencies that are used to construct test questions. Let's discuss test strategy, suggested by those who have gone before you. You can expect each passage to have, like you said, several questions. So there's going to be several parts to each passage, but each passage would have several questions, generally at least 3. All right, did you know that? 3 questions, sometimes up to 5 we've heard. Okay. What does the strategy passage or question imply? You know what we're talking about here? Yes, there you go. Where do you start? Right. So this is a time test. It's one of the few that demands good time management. So do you read the passage and then try to answer the questions, or do you read the questions and then try to find those answers up in the passage? Or what's been your strategy before this workshop? Let's just do a quick show of hands. Do you mind? Let's do this. How many here, by show of hands, begin generally by reading the passage, then trying to find the answers? You start with the passage. Thank you. All right. How many start with the questions? All right. Well, thank you for that too. So that's your current personal strategy, isn't it? All right. So again, this sign appears on many of the pathways over in the training sites. It's a message of encouragement sometimes, or it's a message to give you directions or suggestions from those who've gone before you. So according to them, the greatest challenge is going to be your investment of time. So their suggestion is to read the questions first, or at least skim through them before reading the passages. Now here's why they're saying this. There's 4 types of questions, right? We just looked through a few examples of each type. Some questions are less challenging. They require less time. So the suggestion is to invest your time on the least challenging questions the first pass through the test. 2 types of questions are least challenging. We know they are vocabulary, and what would you think would be the other one? Yeah, structure. Investing time on these questions on the first pass through the test provides a preview to each passage. And it slows you down. It puts you on a pace for success. So you go through the test the first time, you answer as many of these as you can. You go back the second time, there's less stress about that. And you've had a preview to each one of the passages. All right, so that's a brief overview of the competencies or the types of questions you can expect on the test. And I believe we said there were 30 questions, and we say maybe to budget about 60 minutes was the suggestion. Can you see now then why by identifying a question by its competency, that gets you one step closer to choosing the correct answers? All right. So what do you know about then the percent to pass? What have you heard? Well, the percentage recommended is 80% when you're working at the trading site. That's what we also require at the test camp on our quizzes and tests during the training. But that's probably higher than what's required in your state. Remember, it's all part of one big test. So this section is contributing to your overall score. But here are 30 questions at 80% would mean your goal would be to find 24 correct answers. All right, but again, be sure to check the required score in your area. All right, let's consider those competencies one last time in a different way. Which would you choose? Now let's say time wasn't an issue, right? If you had your choice, if this could be one big test based on just ideas, would you like that? How about if it was just one test on choosing 30 times you had to choose the purpose? How about the structure? Are you better at figuring out why the author put certain phrases or sentences together? Or would you like to have one big vocabulary test? Right, 30 questions that would all be based on passages you read, but you're choosing vocabulary. All right, so talk about this at your tables. Which would you choose if you could have 30 questions based on just one of these competencies? We'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. Again, for you folks joining us today live online, share your thoughts and we'll include them in the discussions. You've been very helpful. We appreciate that. And if you're joining us on the Test Camp YouTube channel on demand, this is your last time to go ahead and pause the recording and list some of your thoughts about which areas you prefer. We'll be back in just a few moments when you restart the video. All right, so you had very different preferred topics, but everyone agreed that the more time invested is usually on those key ideas and purpose questions, right, than on structure or vocabulary. All right. So to prepare for this test, you join this workshop and you gain knowledge about what to expect. Pretty glad you did this. It's worth your time. All right, so another way to prepare then is to select the tools you might need, the best and most reliable resources that are available out there for guaranteeing your success. So expect to see this sign along the way. Again, during the pathways during your test skills training. There's encouraging messages that are posted for those who have gone before you. And in this case, their message is to avoid spending your time and your money on expensive resources that you just don't need. Commercial webinars. You heard about these? These are a good example. Avoid paying for webinars for free test information and strategies that you can get almost anywhere, especially posted out there by the test company. Everything out there is free. You don't need to pay for expensive tutors or tutoring companies. That might be an option for more challenging tests, but not for this one. And of course, beware of those overpriced study guides. These are also sold for profit. Many study guides are available. They're either free or inexpensive. And a more effective and inexpensive resource, of course, is textbooks. So now that you know the competencies being tested, you can use textbooks to review and study the test content. Now, in the My Resources area over at the test site, over at the training site, expect to find the most popular and up-to-date tools for your success. Again, many of the resources you can see here, they're either free or very inexpensive. Yeah, so you've already bought a study guide, you said? And you paid twice as much for that. Yeah, that's a direct link where you can go to Amazon and you can get the best study guide and use study guides for as low as $15. We've seen on those recently. Right. So here's what we're going to suggest, or what they're suggesting to you is don't invest time and money on resources. Invest your time on yourself, right? Practice your test skills. Expect to gain confidence and personal independence. You don't need to depend on all those other resources. Your pass provides admission to these training areas, and up there at the top is My Test. This is where you get the practice. This activity enables you to check your understanding of the test blueprint and everything we talked about here today. And you can also take a pretest before you even begin training. This is the test camp problem solving system. That first step up there you probably recognize. The first step is to identify the type of question by the competency. All right, and then that decide up there, that's going to help you with your time management and right on down through. Quizzes and tests provide an opportunity to practice your test skills while assessing your test content knowledge. And the quizzes are based on the competencies. Questions and answers change randomly on each attempt. Over in the test area, there's practice tests and that post test. And these are going to have features like you can expect on test day. Yes, ma'am. Question right over here. I'll repeat for the folks listening in. Yes, there are several practice tests on here. You get up to 3, and they're going to be randomized. Gives you plenty of time to, yes, there's nothing to pay extra for that. No, once you have your pass, you get everything that you saw on here. Yep. And as you complete the training activities, you can earn points towards a professional test certificate, and that guarantees your success. Everybody's passed. All right. Then expect to perform with the confidence that comes from the knowledge and skills earned during the training. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. There's no better time than now to empower your